Welcome to CIA, Contagious Influencers of America. My name is Tim Storey. They call me the life coach to the stars. I have with me 9-time Emmy Award winner, and his name is David Sams. David, wow, these podcasts have been amazing.
I am having the time of my life traveling around the country and soon around the world, getting these amazing stories, testimonials, inside scoops on believers.
The feedback.
These are people of faith who are just on fire for the amazing promises of God. One of them I stumbled across that we're going to feature today.
Yes.
I have had on my heart for a long time special needs ministries. We've seen some amazing ministries, including Johnny and Friends, what they've been able to do over the years. There is something lacking in the church as a whole, and that is special needs programs, especially as they relate to autism.
Yes.
A lot of folks just absolutely have no clue what to do with families with kids with autism. A lot of churches have absolutely no idea of their responsibility as it relates to these families. First of all, do you know what the divorce rate is amongst families with children with autism?
I do not.
It's over 80%.
See, just amazing.
1 out of 51 kids has been diagnosed as on the autism spectrum.
So the amazing thing, as you're saying, is that somebody decided to get a God idea. That's Craig and Samantha Johnson.
Yes.
And we also have with us today their pastor, Joel Osteen.
Right.
Joel Osteen, one of the leading voices in the world.
Right.
Hooking up with Craig and Samantha Johnson. And you interviewed them. What an interview.
Their story is amazing because they went to work for Pastor Osteen at Lakewood Church, which is an amazing place. And they had a son that was diagnosed with autism. So the reason that they went there was not the reason they ended up really doing what they're now doing.
Yes.
They have created something called Champions Club. And when they began this ministry, and the church earmarked, I believe it was $500,000 to start this. I mean, this was not, just let's go start something down there. We got an extra room down there. No, I mean, they made a real commitment to do this. Guess what happened when they started Champions Club at Lakewood Church?
What happened?
For families with autism. They added 300 new families to the church within 6 months.
Just amazing. And for many, many reasons. Because success is finding the need and filling it. And as we have here, 1 in every 51 kids is being diagnosed with autism.
Yeah, and in Houston, what happened is that other churches, they were not there for these families.
Only 2% of churches have any sort of outreach to families with special needs.
Isn't that crazy?
Really is.
To me, special needs represents the greatest way to attract. It's like a magnet. If you have special needs ministry in your church, what's going to happen is that people are going to find you and start going to your church. I'll give you an example. Now, this isn't exactly what we're talking about today, but I had a special need when I was going through my divorce.
Yes.
And I needed special attention. I found out about divorce care.
Okay.
And divorce care is an amazing ministry for those who are going through divorce. And you basically go to a facility, go to church with a group of 20, 30, 40 other people going through what you're going through right now.
Yes.
And they hug you, they minister to you, they help you work through what you're going through. And I went through that for 13 weeks. I remember they were giving this at my church, and they asked those of us who showed up the first night, how many of you actually go to church here? I think there were 71 of us in the room, believe it or not.
Yes.
Of course, it's Southern California. A lot of people go through divorce, so it was a big class. But 71 people, right? Only 13 of us raised our hands that we went to church there. That meant to me that there were people that ended up in that church who did not go to that church because they needed that special attention, that love, that information.
Yes.
At that point in time in their lives. Imagine if the church as a body, imagine if we were to open up our doors to those with special needs,
Yes.
right? Like autism.
It's just a matter of, as you're saying, paying attention to what is taking place. We see the same thing with mental illness. There's so much of a challenge with mental illness that we're facing today, and sometimes we just act like it's going to just go away. It's not. But let's listen to the interview. Craig and Samantha Johnson and Pastor Joel Osteen.
Let's do it. We're here now with Craig and Samantha Johnson. They're the founders of Champions Club for Special Needs Kids right here at Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. This is the church that is pastored by Joel Osteen. And I have all three of them here now. And Samantha, I am going to start with you. Samantha, you're the real champion here, the mother of Connor, the inspiration, the boy behind the reason you all started Champions Club here at Lakewood Church. How do you feel when Connor was diagnosed on the autism spectrum?
We thought we had our plan we had a boy and a girl, and we thought, that we were complete. We thought that was our family. Craig had a vasectomy, and I found out about 4 days later that we were pregnant with our surprise child. So it was a good surprise.
Yeah. Well, not in the beginning. We had a plan. I mean, we had a 12-year-old and a 10-year-old boy and girl. We thought they'd graduate from college and we could be in the Winnebago going across country, doing things that we love to do. But God had a big, big, big plan in store, for sure.
So you lived in California for some time, and then you had a big move.
I'll never forget the weekend. It was actually a challenging weekend. My dad was only 59 years old, and he had a massive heart attack. And it was a week before we were leaving to come to Lakewood. So we did the funeral on the Friday. We said our farewell to our church on Saturday and Sunday, and then we left for Houston on Monday. So to say the least, it was an overwhelming experience, but it was definitely God.
What got you to move from California to Texas?
Well, Pastor Joel and Lakewood Church, they were about a year away from going in the Compact Center. So they were looking for staff that could work with that growth and work with what they're about to do with the new vision. And so we were contacted to be a part of that. And so for us, they were saying that it was going to grow 25,000 people in 1 year once they moved from the one building to the next. And it wasn't like Easter and they were going home after that. They were staying, they said. So to say the least, it was overwhelming because we knew just in the children family area, we had to gain 700 volunteers in 1 year. And then about 6 months into it, we found out that our son who would play with other friends, all of a sudden, now he was playing by himself. And where he would give us a hug or show emotion, now he would look away and show no emotion. Where he was talking to us, he stopped talking altogether. And the best way I could describe it was like a car wreck. 1 minute he was one way, and the next minute he was another. And so when those two huge events hit us, it was almost like the perfect storm and a pretty overwhelming time.
Joel, you brought on Craig and Samantha for one purpose, but God had another idea.
Yeah, it's been amazing, David, because Craig did originally come to work with the children and, develop that ministry. But when Craig's son was born with autism, it opened Craig's eyes to basically there's not really a place here at Lakewood for them. And, I grew up in church and, after all these years, we didn't have anything for special needs. When Craig mentioned that, it felt right to me. There were parents not able to come to church because they couldn't take care of their kids. But when Craig told me that, we knew it was right, and so we didn't know it would have the impact that it's having today.
Yeah, I mean, we were like a lot of pastors. We had no idea how much autism was growing at the time, and when it happened to our family, so many things change when that happens. You start dealing with things of what's happening in the home. And when that happened with Connor, when he stopped talking, he knew what he wanted to say, and that at one time he could speak, but he couldn't get it out. So he began having these terrible outbursts and these terrible fits, and he would have to point to everything, to get what he wanted. And the outbursts got so overwhelming that we were trying everything, and we couldn't figure out what to do. And what changed it for us, what kind of got us focused on helping other people, was first starting with our son. And he started having these fits, right? And I remember with Sam, they got so bad that one day she says, I don't know if I can take it anymore. And I'd never heard my wife say that. My wife, Sam, is my hero. And what she was working through with our son was incredible. So for her to say that, I know she didn't mean it. It was just something that she was overwhelmed at the time.
Tell me about that.
It's a very hard obstacle course to maneuver, because you go to the doctors and you feel like, when your child's sick, you get to the doctor and they can help you. This was kind of, the doctors don't have a lot. They just want to give you a book to read, or they send you home with, all this information. And it really is something, each child is so different. Each family is so different. But I think it's the one thing that you can't rely so much on the doctors with, because they're kind of stumped with the whole process. So it really is parents taking on, the battle and finding the answers. And I think that was what was so difficult, was I wanted someone to tell me what to do. And we actually had to just go out and, you have to fight for your child, to get them into programs or to get treatment for them. There's not just a clear cut, do this and this and this, and your child's going to be okay. So as a parent, that's really scary to maneuver, and then figuring out, well, how did this happen, or why did this happen? And I think you deal with, you deal with a lot of guilt of, did I do this, or what happened? Why did this happen to my child? Why not? It's just a lot that you've got to take on. And then when you try something and you think, oh, this is going to be it, you get all excited and you find out you don't have the same results as maybe somebody else did. So then you got to start again and think of another therapy. And you're just, it gets to a point where a lot of parents just do whatever it takes to try to help their child, whether it's, mortgaging their house, or, flying to another state because there's a doctor in that area that they've heard, can help. And so I think that's probably, you're maneuvering this huge situation on your own.
And I'll never forget, David, I was driving to work one day, and I just asked God, why? Why is he struggling so much? We're trying everything. He's struggling so badly. And I'll never forget what God spoke to me. And it was almost like he was sitting in the seat next to me in the car, and he said, Craig, your child is not a burden. Your child is a gift. And I think that was a big thing to realize, even for what we're about to do, that these kids aren't something that we're just supposed to live with and just try to take care of, but they're a gift to us. And I said, God, what do you mean? I know what you mean. I love my son. What are you saying? And he said, again, your child is not a burden. Your child's a gift. I said, what do you mean, God? He said, you're looking at everything that's wrong with him. You're not looking at the one thing that's right with him. And I said, God, I love him. I care about him, but he's struggling so much. And then God just said it so clearly. He just said, Craig, I'm going to use your son to reach millions of people. Now, I got to be honest with you. I was really at a vulnerable place. Even as a pastor, I could not imagine my son reaching millions of people at that time. My son could, and I told God this. I said, God, my son can't even ask for a drink of water. How's he going to reach millions of people? And I'll never forget what God spoke to me. He spoke to me 4 words. And I think these are the 4 words whenever you're in a desert or whenever you just need a cool cup of water, he'll speak these 4 words to you. And he just said, do you trust me? And, I didn't give him the pastoral answer, right? I said, there is no cure for autism. I said, you're all we've got. But I said, I trust you. And right after I talked with God at that time, David, I thought it was going to get better. It got worse. The outbursts got worse. We would just sit and cry, lay our heads on the pillow at night. And I remember looking over at my wife and saying, what do we do? How do we work with this? And I thought it was crucial where we were at Lakewood. Joel's message is you're not a victim, you're a victor. And those messages kept on playing in my head. And instead of listening to those voices, I run up to my son's room and I pick him up. I put in my head, as I said, you're not a victim, you're a victor. I said, you can do all things through Christ who strengthens you. I said, you're more than a conqueror. And I began to speak those words into his life. And that was a starting point for us, that we had to deal with so many attacks and thoughts in our mind. I always tell people this. I said, you only got grace for a day. When you're dealing with a child with autism, you can't think about 2 weeks or 3 years or 5 years down the road. You've got to take today and make the best of it. But about 3 months later, all of a sudden, my wife came calling from upstairs. She said, Craig, get up here. Get up here. And I thought something was the matter. I knew she was up in Connor's room. And I run upstairs. I said, what is it? She said, Craig, I was putting Connor to bed and I was reading him a couple books. And she said, all of a sudden he began to speak. And he began to say one word after another word, one sentence after another sentence. Now, you got to understand, I haven't heard my son put 2 words together in 3 years. I said, what do you mean? He began to speak, and tears started rolling down my cheeks. And she said, he spoke. And I said, what did he say? And I'll never forget, my wife walks me over the bed, leans over the bed, and she says, Connor, say it for mommy and daddy. Say it again. And my little 5-year-old boy lifted up his head, and all of a sudden he began to speak. And he said, this is my Bible. I am what it says I am. I have what it says I have. I can do what it says I can do. Today I will be taught the word of God. I boldly confess. My mind is alert. My heart is receptive. I will never be the same. I'm about to receive the incorruptible, indestructible, ever-living seed of the word of God. I'll never be the same. In Jesus' name. And that was my son's first words. And we weren't doing the golf clap. We couldn't believe it. We were so excited. And that's when the shift took place. Kids that were invisible before became visible. Kids that were marginalized and many times forgotten, God helped me remember them and help Sam to remember them. Because we were not only living it every day, but we experienced that when you take your child to the pool and he walks in there and he's acting different and everybody turns to look at your child as a freak, that he's not a freak. He's just working through his challenges just like anybody else. And it showed us that we've got to begin to educate people. But the biggest thing that happened through that was I was walking into Lakewood Church and I had another God encounter, and God all of a sudden stopped me. He said, look at what you're doing for typical kids. He said, it looks like Disneyland. He said, look at what you're doing for special needs kids. And we had one room with some caring individuals. And I knew it wasn't very much. He said, those kids deserve the very best, just like every other child. And he said, when you look in these kids' eyes, what you're seeing is me. Because when you do it on the least of these, you do it unto me. And he said, favor will follow you in every other area when you begin to reach out to these families. Because God told me, he said, I'm not going to let them be forgotten anymore. And so that was kind of the genesis of our mission and what began to take place from there on in.
Joel, one thing we're trying to do is to encourage churches, not hit them over the head, but encourage them to let them know that if they want to grow their church, a lot of churches still send out postcards.
Yeah.
But there's no better way to grow a church than by opening the door to those with special needs and the families of those.
It's so important. It's something that we didn't see for, maybe 30, 40 years, but when we did, we never dreamed 300 families would join the church, and just the effect that it would have. And, we would have done it if we would have known. We just didn't know. And I think a lot of, my friends that have churches, we get in contact with them. It's the same way. They have the heart to help. But when we were made aware of there are people that can't come to services because their children are not able to sit out there, it was a no-brainer for us. Again, not knowing that it would have this kind of impact, that there are that many people that have special needs children.
Once you discovered that, and once you saw these kids in a different light, what happened next to make this happen in a big way? The Champions Club.
Well, I think that God told me two things. He said, whatever you build, one, you can't turn away any kids. It's got to be that good. And then two, you got to take care of the parents as much as the kids. So there's got to be programs around it to help the parents. And so we went to some of the top researchers at the University of Texas Medical Center, and we asked them to be a part of this task force. And we told them what we were looking for. And to our surprise, we couldn't believe it, but they said, nobody's doing what you're talking about. And so they joined the task force. We went to some of the top educators that were in the top special needs schools in the area, and they came apart. And then we found special needs parents, some great special needs parents, and we put them all together, and we began to work an entire year on what would become the Champions Club. And the Champions Club was going to be a holistic model, mind, body, soul, and spirit. So there was a physical therapy area, a sensory area, an educational area, and a spirit area. And what began to be put together, that would be the launch of Champions Club Developmental Center.
I need help! We need help, Isaiah. Isaiah, no,
You're gonna fall.
come to
Be careful.
rescue.
Okay, we're now standing inside of the Champions Club here at Lakewood Church with Craig, as well as a volunteer, Araceli. Craig, you mentioned just a few moments ago the 4 key parts of Champions Club: mind, body, soul, and spirit. Now that we're in this environment, can you explain for the people listening how you are able to accomplish all 4 parts with the program?
Yeah, we have 4 workstations at the Champions Club. There are 4 different rooms, or you can have 1 room and 4 stations. And the stations are the educational, the spirit room, the motor room, and the one we're in right now is the sensory room. And the sensory room really works for the kids as a calming area. So when the kids are really frustrated or they're struggling when they show up, this is an area that will really calm them. It also deals with all their senses. So you have different equipment here. For instance, there's this, is it called Spectrum Magic?
Sensory Magic.
Sensory Magic. And Sensory Magic has 80 different visual videos with music, and the kids just love it. They're attracted to it. There's another piece of equipment that when your voice moves, it moves with you. And
Sound sensitive. The Sensory Magic, it also has educational aspects, and not only English but different other languages as well. We have the Somatron, which is a giant beanbag that moves with sound. So we play worship songs, and while they're getting ministered with music, but then they're also feeling the movement on the beanbag with the sound and the sound waves that the music makes. We have rocking horse, so they're able to have fun, yet at the same moment they're able to practice on their balance and practice on being able to focus more on their activities at the moment.
And not all Champions Clubs are the same. So you can start a Champions Club with very little money, and we can teach you how to do that with very little money and get the right equipment, or you could do it with a lot more equipment like this.
Oh, that's awesome. With us now is one of the parents with children in Champions Club. Can you tell me your name?
My name is Lydia Rios.
And your child's name?
Emmanuel and Israel Serrano.
What was life like before you discovered Champions Club?
Well, I actually was married back then before finding out my sons have disabilities, and we started coming to church, And we actually stopped before they turned 3, because on a regular class they just told me, like, we can't, they don't cooperate, they don't sit down. And then we found out they had autism, and heard that Lakewood had the Champions Club. And so I came and I brought my kids, and so that allowed me to come to attend service. And it was a blessing because, a few later, like 1 or 2 years later, my husband left. And I stay alone. And Champions Club, it's a family. The staff, the volunteers, they all loved on us, and they kept us strong.
When your husband left, that must have really been a shock.
Yes, because I didn't expect him to walk away.
And tell me what it has been like having the support here, and what it would be like without this support.
I can imagine life without church. I had PTSD after everything that happened, and depression, and so being here and having the support from church, and it was more than just prayer. They actually walked with me. They told me, Lydia, you can do this. They found me a counselor. They watched my boys, and so my heart breaks when families are not available, allowed, or they can't attend church, because other churches don't know, other people don't know that their kids require special attention. And I love the fact that Champions Club is not just like a room where the kids come and sit down and somebody's babysitting. They actually come, they're learning, they have a routine. They the volunteers know them. They know their needs. They know how to work with them. They know how to reinforce, how to work with their behavior. So it's more than just, it's just not coming to, like a childcare place. It's more than that. And they play, they jump. So each room has its purpose, and each volunteer know my kids. So.
Thank you, Lydia. The volunteers here are truly amazing. Joining us now is
Joy Beard. I've been volunteering here for 2.5 years.
What do you see that's unique about the Champions Club that you don't find other places?
I think a big part of it is the heart. It's people who aren't necessarily trained all the time. They come in with just a heart for the population, a heart for serving kids with special needs.
What do you hear from the parents?
They're just constantly like, thank you so much. Thank you for all you do. We're so grateful that you have this. They definitely entrust us and have, feel like their kids are safe and taken care of here. And I think they also love the fact that they can see the growth. Like, we just had a new kid start at my service a few weeks ago, and the first week he came, he tantrumed almost the whole time, like that transition. He didn't know what to do. It was new and it was uncomfortable for him, and even while he was with us, he would often cry a lot. The next week he was tentative, but he went in on his own. The last 2 weeks, they take his shoes off and put him in the locker, and he runs in on his own. And just like to see his personality and see the look on his mom and dad's face when he just walked in on his own, they were just amazed. And the fact of even the day when he was tantruming, we weren't like, oh, mom, dad, we don't think we can take him. We were like, it's okay, we've got him. Like, go to service, enjoy it, we've got this. And I think just them knowing that we're not intimidated, that we're not scared, that we're here to love and to care for their kids, and that we're equipped to support that. They've been very grateful for that.
What would you say to other folks right now? What can a Champions Club or a program of this type bring to a church?
I think it brings more of a sense of community and acceptance for everybody. It opens up the opportunity for families who have special needs children to be able to come to church, because without a program like this or without a service, a lot of these kids can't go to your typical Sunday school classroom. They can't go in and be in service with their parents, and so oftentimes these families aren't coming to church. So by opening up and having something like this, it gives them the opportunity to come to hear about Jesus, to get fed with his word, that they wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to. And that, yes, they may find pastors who they can watch online, but coming and having that community and actually being planted in a church makes a complete difference. That just continues to help support the kids as well.
Wow, Craig, there is just something so very special talking to the moms and the volunteers here at the Champions Club here at Lakewood. It is so obvious the impact that the relationship that they have to the church, to Lakewood, to Champions Club has just been life-changing. Can you tell me what happens to people at that point when they discover they have a child with autism, and what happens to their church life?
Well, I would say less than 2% of churches have anything for special needs in the world. And so when they don't have anything, they become what I call backdoor Christians in the beginning. They're moving from the back door because their child's acting up and they have to take them in the back foyer area, and then they try coming in church. And if there's nothing for them, after a while, they just stop coming. Many of the families are shut-ins. So they're living at home. Their church is watching somebody on TV or listening to somebody on the radio, and that becomes their church. And so most of them are not going to church. And I noticed it right away because we're sitting here in a church this large, and we've got 10 families in this one room. And I'm going, there's no way there can be 45,000 people here and only 10 special needs families. And so when we launched Champions Club, we didn't know what kind of response we were going to get. But I'll never forget, staying in front of the congregation, I just said, I know you've been rejected by society. I know you felt rejected by the church, but we've put together a program just for you and your family. And I know you feel forgotten, but you're not forgotten anymore. And when I said that, the crowd erupted. I mean, just a standing ovation. And I remember thinking, man, this is really, God's doing something here. I don't know what it is. And when we opened up Champions Club, in the first 6 months, over 300 families experienced Champions Club in the first 6 months.
This is a magnet for churches.
It really is. We did it because it was the right thing to do. Of course, if 4 people would have come, that'd have been fine. Never dreamed 300 families would come. Word spreads so fast when you're taking care of those with special needs, and it's just, again, it's one of the favorite things we do. We do a lot of great things, but there's nothing like, providing a place for people that, have some challenges to come, and the parents get to enjoy the services, to be uplifted. Your volunteers, there's nothing like when your volunteers helping those people, and so they leave inspired as well. And plus, Craig's able to put on these dinners we do for them and special plays for them, and we let the ones that have physical challenges volunteer as well. And somebody greeting you at the door that has autism or Down syndrome, that says something too, that, hey, you're valuable, and this is who's at Lakewood.
So you had 300 new families come to Lakewood within 6 months. What did you hear from these families?
They couldn't believe there was a program like this inside of the church, because there was nothing like this inside the medical community in the area. Nothing like this inside of a program anywhere in there. It was the best. And I'm not saying that to brag on us. I'm just saying that was our goal, to get the best researchers and the best educators and help us come up with something. They couldn't believe a church could do it. And now we had Texas Medical Center, Children's Hospital coming to see our program to see how they could do it in their communities. And it was transformational. It transformed their lives. I mean, when you go from being shut in, not going anywhere, and being rejected, people ask me this all the time, David. They say, what kind of training do we have to do this? Do we have to have specialists and all this? I would say it's 10% train and 90% love and acceptance. What families like mine are looking for is, will you just open your heart up to us? Will you give us an opportunity? Will you just do something for us? Because we want to be a part of your church. We want to be a part of your community. And we want to serve. And we want to give. And we want to be a part of what you have, because we need hope. And that's what our families need. We're just looking for hope every week. We know what we're living with. It's 24/7. It's like a refrigerator being carried on your back. Every single day, I watch my wife work through it, and myself work through it, and our son work through it. We know what we're dealing with. What we're looking for is hope.
So let's talk about the hope that Champions Club is providing to people. What are some of the results? What are you seeing?
One of the things that we heard from a parent the other day, Linda, who began to share her story about how her son had struggled in classroom, both behaviorally, and then he wasn't being developed properly. He was really struggling. She began to bring him to Champions Club. And that's one of the areas that we have educationally. We work with the kids and their numbers and their letters and all these different types of things. And he started to learn to count. He started to learn his alphabet. He started to learn different things that he was learning in Champions Club. And we did a survey recently that kind of parallels with that story. And it said that 86% of parents said that Champions Club has positively affected their child academically. And we've seen that within our own son's life, where lots of times it's one step forward and two steps back. But when you're getting that reinforcement and you're working with these kids on a constant basis, we're seeing them go to the next level.
We had a neat experience with our son too in the Champions Club. He, even from an early age, he liked signing, and so he would sign different things. And there was a little boy in the Champions Club that didn't speak at all, and he just strictly signed. And he had been upset, and he was wanting his mom. And so Connor went over and just started signing, "Mommy, we'll be right back." And he, was signing it back and forth, and the teachers were just really touched to see that our son and a little boy were signing back and forth. And so they got to tell the parent about it when the parent came to pick up the kids. And so there's a lot of things that it sets up an environment for the kids to learn, and I think that was just a neat experience that we experienced with our own son.
Yeah, and it really works with them on the child's behavior. The behavior that they have to deal with so many different emotions, struggles, challenges. And I'll never forget one time with Connor, and this happens with a lot of kids, but Connor has learned over 60 scriptures. He can quote over 60 scriptures now. And one time he had hurt his foot and he cut it, and Sam was putting hydrogen peroxide on his foot, and we're consoling him and stuff. And we go, "Connor, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay." And all of a sudden, Connor lifted up his head and he said, "Is anyone among you sick? Let him call for the elders of the church and they will pray over him." And what he did is he quoted a scripture that identified with his emotion. And that's huge for a child. One, to share that emotion, because they usually don't do that. But to put scripture with that emotion, that's huge. And, we've had another statistic that 100% of parents said that Champions Clubs has positively affected their child's spiritual life. And so they're growing spiritually and they're developing spiritually. And so I remember another story about, the behavior. And this was so powerful, there's this family in the church, and they've got two sons with severe autism. And one of the sons, I was walking by and I was coming by the Champions Club, and I look in this room, and this teenager had gotten so upset that welts started coming all up and down his chest and his back. And he had taken off his shirt, and he was sitting on this beanbag, and here were the Champions Club volunteers, and they were holding each one of his hands, and they were just rubbing his fingers and calming his fingers and just calming him down. And they sit there for over 45 minutes working with this young boy who had had a meltdown and who had physically, it affected him. And the parents came to him afterwards and they said, "You don't know how much Champions Club has helped our son. The outbursts were worse before." And we just got a statistic back that said 96% of parents have seen positive changes in their child's behavior since attending Champions Club. But it all breaks down on willing to go that extra mile. And that's what happens a lot of times with churches, is that they're not willing to go that extra mile with these families, but they do. They're going to see transformation, testimonies. They're going to see things that are truly impacting lives that are hurting and struggling. And it's going to transform the church as much as it's going to transform the family.
So it's basically been a decade since you launched Champions Club, and now you're starting these things in non-church environments as well. Well, describe to me what those places are like.
So Champions Clubs are in churches the size of 100, and they might have one room, and they have the 4 stations in the one room, and they're able to develop the children. They're in orphanages. So if you go to third world countries, the need is just horrible. I was in Argentina, and families drove 1,000 miles to come and hear us speak when we were presenting about Champions Club. And there's one mom who drives 6 hours to church because Champions Club has made such a huge difference in her life. They're in public schools, so it comes alongside their ABA curriculum, this model, this Champions Club model, and we're working on a public school curriculum right now. And then they're in homes. We've developed what's called the Champions Club devotional series, and so there's 31 devotionals for parents to work with their kids every night, every day at home. So it doesn't matter the environment. Champions Club can work with any environment.
Joel, there's somebody out there listening right now. It's just one person who maybe they're a parent of a special needs child, and maybe their child has autism, and they think, oh, it's just little old me. What do I know about starting a ministry? What difference can I make in my church? What would you tell that one person?
Well, I would tell them maybe to talk to the leadership about it, get some information about what it can do. Because again, all the churches that I've talked to, they're more than willing to do something. It's not expensive to start something like this. We're not talking about millions of dollars. For very simple, for low budget, you can get this going, and it's just really having the heart to help. And word will catch on, and other people will want to bring their special needs children there as well. And we know it's the heart of God to help those and help those in need.
David, sometimes when we're trying to win people to Christ, we're all fishing the same pond. And here's a pond nobody's fishing in. There's over 50 million in America alone that has special needs, over 30 million kids and teens. It's growing at an alarming rate. 1 in 51 kids are being diagnosed with autism. So it's going to hit your home through a friend, through a relative, one way or the other. It's time the church begins to respond to it. And it's not only going to help these families, it's going to build your church. I believe that this is the most unchurched people group because most of them have no other option but to stay at home.
So how does a church, if they wanted to start a Champions Club, how does that happen?
Yeah, all they have to do is go to our website, and they go to championsclub.org, and they would contact us. Then we would set up a consultation with them, and we'll find out, their scenario. Maybe they don't have a room for a Champions Club. Then we'll work through that. If they don't have any volunteers, we'll work through that and help them recruit volunteers. If they need a fundraise, we'll work through that. But we will work with the church from the very start all the way through training, our consultation, training, and development and launch to help them start a special needs ministry in their church. Churches that tap in to reaching special needs families, it's literally going to change the church as much as it's going to change the family. That's what's happened at our church. We have more testimonies that come out of Champions Club than just about any other ministry in the church. Out of 90 ministries at Lakewood Church, the Champions Club has the most retention out of any of the ministries at the church. So it impacts the volunteers. They build relationships with these kids, these families. The volunteers will tell you, I've been changed by this child's life, and be able to work through that and see them, even if it's small little steps. I always say this, what one may see as ordinary, another may see as a miracle. And for a family like mine, if your family, if you're able to sit down with your daughter or son, you're able to have a conversation, that would be a miracle for me. Just to have a conversation, me and my son going back and forth. And when we had that happen the other day where Connor was having a conversation, and he was talking to other people, that was I can't tell you how huge that was for us. And things that we forget about would be miracles for my family. And what Champions Club or what Starting a Special Needs Ministry will do, it will help you see the miracles that God is doing every day. And you'll remember, be thankful for things that you thought was no big deal, but to another family, it was one of the greatest blessings in the world.
Well, thank you, Craig, and thank you, Samantha, and thank you, Pastor Joel. Thank you for the difference you are making in the lives of these kids and these families. And folks, I highly recommend you pick up a copy of Craig Johnson's book. It's called Champion. It's something that's really going to stir your heart and feed your soul. And also check out championsclub.com. There you can find out more about this amazing ministry, how you can start a Champions Club in your area, and also this website provides a list of Champions Clubs all over the world. So, Tim, what really amazes me about what I learned at Lakewood,
Yes.
is the miracles that can happen when you choose to look at things differently. They decided we have got to look at things differently. We have got to open the doors to those who can't find a home, a church somewhere else.
Yes.
It is our responsibility to do just that. And as a result, they have been blessed many, many, many times over. There are now over 60 Champions Clubs around the world. And these are not just churches. There are school systems that are implementing Champions Clubs. And guess what? There are orphanages. Because there are countries with orphanages full of kids with special needs.
With autism and special needs of all sorts. As you're saying.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was just so thrilled. I saw these moms' faces up close in person. I did the interviews with the individual moms, not with just Johnsons and with Osteen, but with the moms. The mother who has the 3 autistic children, whose husband flew the coop.
Yeah.
She just said, I found my family here.
Did you get moved emotionally?
Oh, are you kidding? You cannot look at some of these stories or hear some of these stories and look at the moms' faces on what has happened since these doors have been opened and not shed a tear. I cried with several of them.
Yes. And also the miracles of some of the children that have got into God's presence and are really getting healed.
Yeah.
They're seeing their scores go up. They're seeing their minds being renewed. They're seeing that they're not isolating themselves at times where they were. So there's some real miracles that are taking place as well. Is that correct?
Absolutely. And there are a lot of folks who are now volunteers for the church who are on the autism spectrum.
Yes.
I believe that Craig told me it was something like 90 people.
It reminds me of the story, David, of the stretcher bearer. And remember, there was a paralyzed man, and they wanted to get him to Jesus. And so he had heard that Jesus was close by, but he was paralyzed, which means he was immobile. So they needed 4 stretcher carriers, stretcher bearers, to carry the stretcher to get this man to Jesus, right? A lot of scholars believe that it was several miles away. So could you imagine that there's 2 people on each side? What if one guy said, my arm's getting tired, or I didn't know it was going to be this far, and they put down the stretcher? There would have been trouble because we needed 4 to properly carry him to get to Christ, okay?
Mm-hmm.
In your own life, we're moving into the segment that we call David facing his own Goliaths. When you have felt isolated, when you have felt down, when you have felt less than, would you agree that at times, even though we're the church, there were not enough stretcher bearers that were willing to stick with you on the journey?
There are times that I feel like I've felt that way. There are times I felt like, I'm all alone. But then I'm reminded of a couple of things. Number one, I have a wonderful family.
You sure do.
They have propped me up many times when I have been down, when I felt alone. They've been there for me. The other thing is that I now have beautiful, wonderful, amazing, talented daughters who prop me up. I think the family has really helped me tremendously. And I'm not too proud to say, I'm willing to share. There have been times that I felt very distraught.
Yeah.
And I felt alone, and I've called my dad in the middle of the night. I've called my sister, who's a couple years younger than I am, in the middle of the night. And by the way, they live on the Eastern time zone. And many times I'd call them when I was in the Pacific time zone. So it can be 3, 4 o'clock in the morning for them, and they take my calls. It's amazing what happens when you have somebody on the other end of the line that'll take your call.
Yes.
And I know a lot of folks don't have people like that.
That are willing to go the extra mile. And we find this even with Craig and Samantha Johnson and also Pastor Joel Osteen. These are people that are willing to go the extra mile. But David, if I could say this as a life coach, that I think that that's one reason you're willing to go the extra mile, because you are that guy. I think that it's innate in you, that you've always been that kind of person. I think you're compassionate, so that brings it out of you. But also you understand pain. Those of us who understand pain, man, don't you want to just stand in the gap for people?
Well, that's like Lakewood. Well, I have had my family in the past to rely on when I'm down. A lot of folks don't have that. A lot of parents, especially moms with kids with autism, single moms, they have not had that support system to rely on. It is absolutely amazing. We had to put this church on. We had to put this church on to tell the amazing story of transformation and the amazing story of being the extended family for hundreds, if not thousands of moms that had nowhere to go. They have found that special bond, this special family at their local church there at Lakewood through the Champions Club. So I just want to encourage. I don't want to preach at anybody. I don't want to turn this into a pulpit here, okay? That's not what we do here. But what we do here is to encourage people.
We do.
And we share tools with you to help you get through whatever you're going through. And the one thing I want to share right now, and the one thing I want to encourage somebody listening right now, because I know there's somebody listening right now who we're touching with this message, and that is, go make it happen. You can start a Champions Club for as little as $500.
Yeah.
They've created this system for any church of any size to really start a Champions Club. You don't need $500,000. You can have a few $100s to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So there is really no excuse. And a lot of people will say, yeah, but you know what? I just don't know anything about that. Well, guess what? 50 years ago, people didn't know a lot about divorce.
Right.
People didn't want to talk about it in church. And like I said, when I went through my divorce 10 years ago, I went to divorce care at church. Whereas 30, 40 years ago, people acted like it didn't exist, right? Well, somebody came up with a bright idea that, look, let's go love on people going through divorce.
Yes.
And now it's like the biggest thing in church because people know that half their congregation is going to go through something.
Unfortunately, that's true.
So the same goes with this whole special needs thing. If you are a church leader or an influencer or on the board or whatever it is with your church, or if you, let's just say you're a big donor and you have some clout, okay? We know there are some of those out there too. You know, call up your pastor, call the church board, and really encourage them to look at serving those with special needs. Regardless of whether it's Champions Club or some other mechanism to get special needs ministry into your church, please do it. You know, the era of marketing your church with postcards and, you know, all that stuff, theme weeks and, you know, doing at the movies. And boy, we've gotten so clever about how we market church, right? You know, what's the Bible tell us our number one responsibility is?
Really, to walk in love and to help the hurting and to love the poor and
those with special needs. And the bottom line is that
yes,
we're biblically commanded to do that. By our estimation, less than 2% of the churches in America are actually paying attention to this.
Yes.
So if you want your church to grow, Do what Lakewood Church did in Houston. Start a special needs ministry. Definitely consider a special needs ministry for autism. And you want to see your church grow by leaps and bounds? I will guarantee you're going to see that happen just as they did.
That's a beautiful thing. And I'm challenged as a pastor. We have the Congregation Church in Placentia. We have been talking about this because this was brought to us about 2 months ago. I'm going to instantly implement this. I will get all the information. We'll get the right team involved. This is touching me. And the fact that me and you are such good friends, you went and saw firsthand that it works. You heard the stories, the testimonies from the parents and the young people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look, folks, we are here to inspire you, to light a fire under you, to share stories, to share tools. And this is one of the most important episodes of this podcast that we have done or that we will ever do.
Yes, I agree.
I mean, a lot of these things are about entrepreneurship, about making your dreams happen, about, going out and finding your purpose, et cetera, et cetera. And that's all great. But there is such a need right now to get behind this cause that I really do believe that it's one or two or three or four of you who are listening to this right now. You're going to make a huge difference, And please do share this episode of the podcast. And whatever you do, get this into the hands of your pastor or members of your church board. Highly, highly encourage them to start a special needs ministry in your church.
I love it. This is Tim Storey and David Sams. You are listening to CIA. David, we cannot go out of this program without you doing that amazing conclusion that you do about that life is supposed to be very colorful.
Wait, you want me to sing I Did It My Way? Is that what you're saying?
That's not what I'm asking. And I ask that you please do not do that.
Well, let's just remind people that you can find us almost everywhere.
Everywhere.
Some of you probably can't get away from us now because we're on Alexa, Google, Apple Podcast Addict, and we're on YouTube. So YouTube's a lot of fun to look at. So please do share these podcast episodes. And remember that life is a lot more fun living it in living color. Wait. No, I can't think. See, you got me. So what have you done to me? And remember, life is so much fun. Oh, no. No. And remember, I could say this. I could change it up a little bit. Okay, this week I'll change it up.
Here we go.
Life's too short to live in black and white. So go out there and live it in living color. It sure is a lot more fun. I don't know if my voice was there, but I'm losing it all.